Hi there, I'm Don Wenslick, and I'm here in Dan Martin's shop, and today we're going to make some shop drawers. And the shop drawers are a little bit easier to make than all those fancy dovetail things. So right now I've got a piece of 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood, and we're going to rip some sides. Okay, we have successfully ripped all of our different sides on the saw, and now we're ready to cut them off, and we're just going to rough cut them right now. So I got a bunch of cutting to do here. Alright, we have now rough cut all of our drawers to length. You'll notice that there are 4 different sized drawers, and these are just the sides of the drawers. And right now what we're going to do, we've got the table saw set up to cut a 45-degree miter, and we're simply going to put that miter on one side and then eventually turn all these boards over, and then we'll cut the other one, cut the other side to the size that we want. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, now we're ready for what I consider to be one of the more critical stages or steps in this process. We've cut all the sides and put 45-degree miters on both ends. We have cut a 45-degree miter on one side of the fronts and the back sides for the cabinet. Now, we're going to measure first the top of the opening, and it measures 18 3/16, and then the bottom, and it measures 18 5/16. Okay, those two dimensions typically will not come out the same. However, what we'll do is we'll take the smallest dimension, okay, which was 18 3/16, and we will subtract 1 1/32 from it. And that will be the length of the front and back of the drawers on the outside. Now what we'll do when we actually put these drawers in is we will compensate for the variation by using the side rails that we mount the slides to. We'll make those different thicknesses to compensate so that we have uniform dimensions all the way going down for all 4 drawers. Okay, now that we've got our fronts and backs cut to size with the 45-degree miters, now it's time to start doing some biscuits in a 45-degree miter. And we set up our biscuit joiner, set it on. We're going to use number 10 biscuits, and with a number 10 biscuit and 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood, we want to make sure that we're actually going to put the biscuit in at a point that is high in the meaty part of the 1/2-inch wood. So in order to do that, we're going to have to use a spacer on our biscuit joiner to elevate the cut from the center up to that top lip. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and install our spacer. And it's a simple 1/4 inch piece of bollard birch plywood. And the way it goes on is just with a couple of washers and thumb screws. There we go. Forgot the washer. Washer's coming. Works better with a washer. And we've got that spacer indexed down onto the biscuit joiner, and that will then raise our cut on that 45-degree miter. Let's get plugged in now. This is I'm going to do a rather small drawer first, which only requires 1 biscuit. And what I've done, what I'm going to do is, first of all, the length of the biscuit is roughly 2 3/8. That's the number 10 biscuit. So if we measure from the end, the front face, approximately 1 3/8, that will get the biscuit to be within that width. Okay? And because this is a rather narrow piece, I'm going to go ahead and line this up and use a clamp to hold it in position so it doesn't tip in any way. Okay? And I will just turn it on. Now, you can see that we've got that biscuit cut, and it's very close to the top, and it didn't go through on the back side for a number 10 biscuit. So that's exactly what we want. On some of the wider pieces, we'll be putting 2 biscuits in when we have a minimum of, say, 5 inches to work with. And on the smaller ones, we'll just be using 1 biscuit. So we've got lots of biscuits to put in. Well, we just had a lot of fun. We got all of the biscuits cut in the miters, and since there's 16 drawers times 4, that means that there's 64 pieces. And next step is we're going to put a 1/4 inch deep dado for the bottoms, a 1/2 inch from the edge on each of these pieces. We're actually going to do that in 2 steps. We've got our saw set up, and we've got our 1/2 inch, and our blade is projected to be 1/4 inch deep. We've taken test cuts for that already, and everything's good there. Now we have to make sure that we put this dado on the bottom side of these pieces. So we've oriented the pieces, and hopefully we've got them all in the same direction. So now it's time to make our first cut, and then we'll come back, and what we want to end up with, our plywood's about 220 thousandths thick. That's good 1/4 inch Baltic birch plywood. So we're going to actually make our dado 235 thousandths, and that should give us enough freedom to get those bottoms in those drawers sufficiently without having too much slop. So let's go ahead and make our first cut. After we're done with that, then we'll come back and do the finish cut to get our dado slots. Okay, we now have made 1 blade cut in each of our pieces to insert our bottoms, and we've measured our plywood, and the 1 cut, this is a test board, the 1 cut measured 130 thousandths. Now we measured our plywood, and we think we need about 100,000 more. So what we're doing is we're setting up a micrometer on our fence, and what we want to do is we want to get 100,000 more on our micrometer. So we're moving our fence out, and there's 95 or 45. 91, 81, 82, 92, 120, 105, 101, that's close enough. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our test piece, and we're going to run our test piece and see what kind of shape we're in here. Let's see, your mouse. And it fits very well. It's a snug fit, but it's not a friction fit. So I think we're in good shape with that setting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut our pieces to that setting. And to do that, we're going to have to keep that board against that fence really tight. So we're going to probably add some feather boards to keep that cut nice and straight going through. Okay, because these are shop drawers, I've decided I want to have a center support in all of these drawers. They're going to have the 1/4 inch plywood bottom, but sometimes tools get a little heavy, and we're going to go ahead and put center supports in. Now, the width of the center support really doesn't make much difference. I've got pieces that are 2 inches wide, and some of them are 3 inches wide. And we want to put the support in front to back, so we temporarily assembled one of the boxes, because all we care about is the front to back dimension. And we've gone ahead and cut these center supports so that they'll fit right like that. Now the next step is to biscuit both the ends of the center support and eventually the box ends themselves to receive those center supports. So the first thing that we'll do, and I'll show you an example. This is a center support, and this is going to be a 0 biscuit, because the number 10 on 1/2 inch plywood would actually go through and you'd see about 1/2 inch of the biscuit. So we're going to use 0 biscuits, and we're going to put that 0 biscuit in the end of the center support, and then when we biscuit our end pieces of our drawer, that center support will fit in like that and go front to back in the drawer. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and biscuit the end of our center support on each end. Now we'll go ahead and disconnect that vacuum system. You can see now that we have put our slot in, or our biscuit in our center support. Now the next step, we're going to use this fixture. And the fixture is a very handy thing. You can make a bunch of plates, and the particular plate made here is to put in a biscuit in the center of a 1/2 inch piece of plywood. And each of these basically aligns your biscuit joiner, so that when you slide it in here with your piece of work there centered, your biscuit joiner will hit where you want it to. Now our vacuum system, we can plug in here, and we can plug in our biscuit joiner to make the slot. And now we are ready. And we have our drawer piece, and we have marked our center of our drawer piece, and we line that up with our biscuit joiner. As you can see, we have put a biscuit joint in one of the ends, and it's going to hold our support front to back. Again, this fixture comes in very handy because it's a very easy way to put biscuits in very accurately, repetitively. You don't have to measure each time, you just have different spacers for different heights and different applications. You might have one for 3/4, another one for 1/2, and another one for something else. In other words, a different height of material. And it can be very critical because plywoods don't always measure the same. Some 1/2-inch plywood doesn't measure 1/2 inch. It measures 0.47, and sometimes that makes a difference, especially when you want to hit the center of something that's relatively small. And again, if you're using 3/4 inch plywood and you're building a face frame arrangement or even putting a box together, a cabinet, it's very nice to be able to put everything in the center as opposed to favoring one side or the other for your biscuit joint, because as soon as you don't put it in the center, you no longer are symmetrical, which means that you have to orient everything. If it's symmetrical, then you have a little bit of leeway, you can flip things around. Okay, we've got a number of these supports. Since we have 16 drawers to do, we're going to go ahead and put the biscuits in for the supports in both the front and the back, and the supports themselves. And again, it's a 0 biscuit in a 1/2 inch plywood. Okay, now that we've got our dados in all of our drawers, the sides, the fronts, and the backs, it's time to work on the bottoms, or the plywood that goes in those dados. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure very accurately that dado. And to do that, I'm using a metal rule, because a metal rule will give you a much better reading. We stick it right in the dado, and as you can see, it measures 16 7/8 plus. And we want to subtract approximately a 1/16 of an inch. So the actual dimension for the width of this particular drawer is going to be 16 13/16 plus. Now, since we have 4 drawers per quadrant in that cabinet, we are also going to have to measure each of those drawers for each quadrant. So this particular quadrant is that, and we're going to need 4 backs for that. The next quadrant we'll probably get a different dimension, but again, it's the same technique. So why don't we go ahead and cut some bottoms, 2 sides. You do the length exactly the same way you did the front and back. And now we're going to go ahead and cut some plywood. Okay. Okay, we've taken all of our measurements, and what we've done is we've taken our Baldy Birch 1/4 inch plywood and we've cut it into pieces that are slightly oversized, and now it's time to trim them to the dimensions that we measured. This is the final step in making the bottoms. So let's go ahead and cut a couple of these. Okay, we have cut all of our bottoms, and now as a little tip, we've got a fairly tight dado, and we don't want to ruin that dado, so we're going to put a very slight chamfer on the edges of each shelf bottom. We're going to do it the simple way. And again, this is just a small. Okay. In order to, we put the chamfer on there so that we can put it in the dado without hurting the dado. We don't want the dado to be infringed on. It'll go together a lot easier if we do it that way. Okay, this is the part we've been looking forward to. These pieces are organized now by size, and we've got our braces for the bottom, sides, bottoms, and now we're going to go ahead and put one together. And we're going to use the burl band clamp to do that assembly. I do glue the bottom in. Since we're working with plywood, the expansion and contraction isn't a problem. So we are going to go ahead and do that. So let's start. You notice I'm trying to get glue on both sides of the dado. Okay, we've got number 10 biscuits that go into the sides. And we use the normal spreader technique. We'll go ahead and do the other side while we're at it. And a number 10 biscuit over there. You notice we're doing the glue up on a Formica surface, so it'll clean up real easy. You don't want to do this on regular wood. It will stick. Okay. This is going to be a front or a back. And the first thing we want to do is, of course, the groove, the dado. Beginning. Now this is a zero biscuit. I'm not trying to put a lot of glue on, but I want to get all of that surface area covered. Let's go ahead and put the other side on next. Got that prepped. Now let's see. Got glue on that side, but no glue on this side yet. And okay, as you can see, we've got it together pretty well. Now we're going to lay it down and go ahead and get our band clamp on this. Again, this is a Burl band clamp. Okay, I'm just making it snug. I'm not trying to over tighten it, because now we're going to take a look at it. And the first thing we're going to look at is the corners, and make sure that the corners are not overlapping at all. Because if they are, the door won't fit. And the next thing we're going to look at, the corners look pretty good. We're going to look at the squareness. And there's a little bit of I want to make sure that drawer is square. That looks pretty good. That's good. Give it one little crank. And check the sides. We don't want any bow in the side. We don't want it to bow in. We don't want it to bow out. Because we're going to be putting those slides on, and those slides do not allow you any tolerance for out of square. pretty good. Okay. Now we only have 15 more drawers to glue up in the same fashion. And I'm sure that, let's see here. I think we're all set with the first one. So that's it for now, and we'll go on to do the other 15 drawers and get them glued together. Just a little tip. We're cleaning up the glue squeeze out from doing a drawer, and you'll see that I've got a cute little putty knife here. It has a very flexible blade, okay? And also the blade is conforms to the handle. It doesn't spread out and make, you know, a big egg shape coming out from the blade. And it makes it very easy then to go in and clean out some glue. The flexible blade really helps. And you can see does a very good job that way. But again, not all putty knives are the same. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that if you have a small putty knife that has a flexible blade, it's good. Okay, we have our drawers glued together, and we have a little bit of sanding to do. We want to clean up the corners, make sure the top is flat, and then we're going to do a little 1/4 inch round over on all the sides except for the front outside, which your face plates will be going on. So let's go ahead and trim the corners up, and all we care about is I'll do the inside first. Make that the front. And then quickly just clean it up a little bit with a block sander. And that feels pretty good. Another 15 and we'll be all set. Okay, we have successfully put our drawers together, and now it's time to make some spacers. Now remember that 1 inch and a 32nd for the slides? Okay, that measurement was between the outside rails because the slides mount to this outside rail. The spacers now will have to be flush with that outside rail. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our cabinets and measure that distance to the outside rail. And in this particular case, we measure 530 thousandths. Okay? And on this side, we measure 370. Okay? And here, and we're going to write these things down. So we had 530 and 370. We're also going to write it on here. 530 and 370. And we'll also measure these. And we've got 385. And 485. Okay? 385 and 485. 385 and 485. Okay. Now we're going to make the spacers to that dimension. And this is a very strategic point because we need that to be perfectly flush, and if we make good spacers, that will really help us when we fit the drawers. Okay, I've made spacers now, and we're going to go ahead and install one of these spacers. Now again, the spacer simply is something that's flush with the outside flange. Now where the spacer is positioned, you want the bottom of the spacer to basically be the bottom of the drawer. So where you position it is relative to your overall height of your drawers and how much clearance you want to allow in between drawers. Because we're using straight slides, it's not necessary to leave a lot of clearance, but there has to be some clearance so you don't hit. In this particular case, the top drawer is 3 inches high, and I've decided to leave approximately 1/4 to 3/8 space on top of that drawer. Now I've measured and made teeter sticks to position the bottom of our spacer. And what we're going to do is go ahead and install the spacer now. And the way we're going to do that is we'll put our teeter stick in. Okay. You'll also notice I've gone ahead and put 3/16 holes, and I've put a 3/8 taper countersink in there so that we can screw these babies in. And I've got 2 spacers, one's for the front and one is for the rear. And again, we have these flush against those spacers, and the spacers are coming right off of the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and install that. I need the screws. Okay. Covered up my screw hole. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and put the rest of the spacers in for that top drawer next. Okay, we've put in one of the spacers, and now we've gone ahead and clamped the other side up with our spacer. And again, we're using the same sticks that we made for the left side for this right side. And we'll continue to use these same sticks going around through the cabinets. And then when we go to the next drawer, we will shorten those sticks and use them again all the way around the cabinets. So we'll go ahead and screw this in. Okay, we're using the same spacers that we used to mount the spacer inside, and these are our height guides. And we've gone ahead and taken the male piece out of the slide, and now we are mounting the female part of the slide. And again, I mentioned to you, we're mounting the bottom of that slide exactly level with the bottom of that spacer. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and screw that in. We're going to use 7/16 screws and just put 3 in per side. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We use a Vicks bit to get a starting hole. I'm holding down on the slide, and it's got to be flush with that rail, the front, and then we'll screw it in. Okay, now it's time to put the other side of our slide on the drawer. And what I've done is I've got a spacer here underneath this slide, and this spacer actually puts the drawer slide a 1/16 of an inch above. This will put this drawer slide a 1/16 of an inch above the bottom of the drawer when it's all put together. Now you can put it anywhere, but that's simply where I'm mounting it. This front of this drawer slide has to be flush with the front of our drawer, and the front of our drawer is identified That's the only edge that we didn't round over. We left that one straight. Okay, again, using the VIX bit, what I'm going to do is I'm putting pressure down on the drawer itself, plus on the slide. You'll notice I'm just putting in the front one, and then I'll put the rear one in, and then the one in the middle. Okay, now we'll simply turn this drawer around and we will continue to install those drawer slides. Okay, I ran across a slight problem. I had looked at this drawer and I could tell that it was bowed in the center here. So in order to correct that, because it's also bowed on the other side, what I've done is I've stacked up some business cards on each end and basically made a straight edge using those business cards. And I thought that would be a handy tip when you have this situation. It happens every once in a while. We're going to take this drawer now over to the table saw and cut the other side to get a straight edge, and then we'll take the cards off, turn it around, and cut this edge. Well, we've got our drawers inside the cabinet, and the next thing we're going to do is put some fronts on these drawers. Now, in order to prepare to do that, the first thing I did is I drilled some holes, one in the center that's actually a slightly oversized hole, and then I measured approximately 1.5 inches in from the bottom, since there's a 1/2 inch plus there's a 1/4 inch, plus you need room to get a drill in the backside, so about 1.5 inches from the bottom. And similarly, I moved in about 1.5 inches from the side and put those holes in. So I've got 5 holes to mount the faceplate. Now, it's important to measure very accurately when you're putting on the faceplates, because they will show up big time in terms of any deficiency or misalignment. What I've done is simply put a piece of tape on here to make it a little easier to read my line, and I've decided to use 3/8 of an inch as my overlap, and that would be the overlap I use in the bottom and the side and also on the top eventually. So the next step is to accurately measure each corner position. Now, in order to do that, I use a metal rule, and it's a very easy to read metal rule, as opposed to using a yo-yo or just a tape measure. tape measure isn't accurate enough for what we're going to do here. I used the 16th inch scale, which is very easy to read, and you can actually read a 32nd using that 16th inch scale very easily when you're using it. Now what I want to do, I've drawn a line approximately 3/8 of an inch down and drew a line there, and I've also drawn a line 3/8 of an inch here. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure from this line to the edge, or in other words, the overhang of that front facing on the drawer, and that measurement right there, very accurately, and it comes out to be a measurement of 31/32. And we're also going to measure up from the 3/8 line to the bottom of the facing, and that measures actually 5/8 of an inch. So, and then we're also going to measure from the bottom of this line 3/8 up to the very edge of this, and that comes out to be 9/16. So with those measurements, then we can then mount that faceplate. The height, the overall height of the drawer is going to be from this line to approximately the top of the drawer, and that measures it measures approximately 7 7/16. So now we have all the measurements that we need to put on the bottom faceplate, and what I like to do is work from the bottom and go up. So when we're done, we'll have all the faceplates put on, and for each faceplate we're going to duplicate that same measuring technique in each case, and we're going to try to get 1/8 of an inch gap in between the drawer fronts. Okay? Okay, so now we have made our drawer front for the second drawer. We know the height of it, and now it's time to actually apply it. And if we measure from the top of the drawer to the bottom of this drawer, it measures 1/4 of an inch on each side, so it came out very even. We want 1/8 of an inch gap, so what we're going to actually get is we're going to get an offset on the bottom of the drawer front of 1/8 of an inch on both the left and right side. And then my reference line here to the edge of the drawer, the other offset, this is going to be the same as what we used down here, which was 31/32. So with those numbers, we're going to actually remove this drawer. We're going to use just this center hole, and we're going to set those offsets on the drawer front. Go ahead and just put one screw in, and then slip it back in and test it. And then based on what our result is, we will go ahead and, with the drawer in place, we will actually, if we're satisfied, we'll go ahead and put the other 4 screws in. Okay, we've gone ahead and we've set the borders around this drawer front. You'll notice there's a single screw with a large flange on it, and that is what we are using to position the drawer front. That's the only screw that's installed, and we'll go ahead and insert this into the cabinet, make sure it fits, and then we'll put the other 4 screws in, and that'll position it. Okay, we've reinserted our drawer, and now we're going to check and make sure it's flush with the next drawer, the bottom drawer. We have our 1/8 inch gap between the bottom drawer and the next drawer up. So now we're going to go ahead and put our other 4 screws in. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clamp it. We don't want that baby to move when we screw it in. Left-handed. And there we have it. White oak for my drawer fronts, and it's quarter sawn white oak. And as you can see, I've got different color handles, and I'm missing one. And the one I'm missing didn't match the other 3, so I've got to get one more handle. I ran into a couple of interesting things when I was doing the drawer fronts and so forth. In one case, I couldn't get the drawer out, and what happened is the male and female pieces actually are matched. And if you turn one of these around relative to its counterpart, the lock mechanism is backwards. And that's what happened to me. And I destroyed the slide getting it apart. But we have been able to figure out, and you can get them apart after you screw that up, but it takes a very small screwdriver and well positioned to get the things apart. But you can see where the lock mechanism is, and where this latching mechanism is. So there is a right side and a wrong side, and that's just a tidbit I didn't know. I didn't know slides had to be matched. Okay, there's a couple of things we're going to do after it's mounted underneath my workbench. You'll see on top here I've just put a couple pieces of scrap melamine, and my bench dogs on my workbench go back about 1 foot. So what I'm going to do is make a clean out tray, and the clean out tray will simply be a piece of 1/8 inch hardboard, and then I'll put a border around it using some scrap quarter sawn white oak that I have left over now. So that's pretty much what I have to do, and we'll screw the bottom of this cabinet down into the workbench base, and that's what's going to hold it in. And pretty much done. I might put some Watco oil on the drawer fronts and the trim on the face, just to give the wood some preservative composition. But other than that, I think we're done.